Jonathan Lamb just destroyed Joni Lamb on live TV, and you wouldn't believe why. The family feud between members of the Lamb family doesn't look like it'll be ending anytime soon. Back in 2020, Jonathan and Susie Lamb came out with allegations that a family member had molested their daughter on a family vacation. For years later, allegations that the Lamb family matriarch and patriarch were involved in covering up the case have risen. This time, Jonathan and Susie have been forced to air the family's dirty laundry in public, including on live TV. What has Jonathan got to say about his mother? Let's find out. Joni Lamb is a very respected figure in the world of Christian televangelism. Back in 1997, she and her late husband, Marcus Lamb, collectively began the Daystar television network with a mission to spread the gospel through all means possible. These days, however, Joni's name has found itself in the pages of scandals and controversies. Unlike the first major controversy back in 2010, this time, it might be enough to break her family for good. To better understand the issues concerning the family, we need to travel back to 2021 when CEO Marcus Lamb passed away from COVID complications. The line of succession wasn't exactly established, but many believed that the president's position should have gone to his son, Jonathan Lamb. From a young age, Jonathan had been deeply invested not just in the family job but also in religion. He had spent a lot of time finding himself and his faith and had high hopes of helping many others across the globe do the same. Even before his father's death, Jonathan took up important roles in the ministry. In fact, he was even made vice president. However, upon his father's passing, he was seemingly overlooked for the presidential position, not because he was unqualified, but because his mother, Joni, had intentions of taking up the role. Shortly after her husband's death, Joni, his widow, was made president. Many believe this was the beginning of the tense moments for the family, as some alleged that Jonathan deserved the presidential role but was instead made vice president. According to viewers, he had worked hard enough and deserved that role, but clearly, his mother had other plans. Fast forward to 2024, and Jonathan was fired from his job as vice president. Although the reason behind this sudden decision was initially unknown, Jonathan later shared that it was because he had refused to sign an NDA for some undisclosed reason. He claimed he was demoted for what were called deficiencies. However, the ministry and Joni told a different story. According to them, Jonathan was fired because he had failed to satisfy a detailed performance improvement plan. Joni stated that the decision to terminate her son came after a 15-month review of his performance. Jonathan was terminated from the family TV company on November 16, as indicated in a termination letter he shared with news stations. The letter contained a confidentiality agreement he had signed when he first joined Daystar, stating he would be subject to defamation laws if he made untrue or misleading statements about Daystar or its leaders. Jonathan believed that Daystar had a submission culture and that he was removed from the network's board and his role as vice president because he, Jonathan Lamb, refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement. An email statement from Daystar mentioned that Jonathan was no longer part of the Daystar television network due to his repeated failure to comply with a performance improvement plan, PIP, that expired the day before his termination. According to Jonathan, he was placed on the PIP in April 2024 and was reassigned to oversee the network's cafe facilities and distribution departments. He claimed this was a form of punishment for not agreeing to their demands to sign the NDA. The PIP documents shared by both Jonathan and Daystar outlined 6 points. The third point concerned social media, requiring Jonathan to refrain from posting comments about his reassignment, the PIP, or leadership decisions without prior written approval. Another point concerned Joni Lamb's remarriage, stating that Jonathan had expressed religious objections to the marriage of Doug Weiss to CEO Joni Lamb. Joni's marriage to Weiss, a family friend, became a contentious issue. Joni had always preached against divorce for non-biblical reasons, yet she married Doug Weiss, who had divorced his wife of over 30 years just 2 months after Marcus Lamb's death. Jonathan and Susie were reportedly comfortable with the union until they learned that Doug would co-host Daystar programs with Joni. This disagreement allegedly became the primary issue that led to Jonathan's firing. Susie claimed that Doug's ex-wife, Lisa Weiss, had begged him not to divorce her, but Doug proceeded with the divorce, citing spiritual abandonment. Since his termination, Jonathan has reportedly engaged in a smear campaign against Dayar and its leadership, alleging that he was sidelined because he was not designated as the future president of Dayar following Marcus Lamb's death. Interestingly, Joni shared that Marcus had initially willed the ministry to Jonathan, but when Jonathan and Susie pursued the molestation case against her wishes, Marcus rewrote his will, granting Joni the right of inheritance. The situation escalated further when journalist Julie Roy, through the Roy's Report, published an article on November 20, 2024, highlighting allegations of molestation concerning Jonathan and Susie's daughter. Dayar's legal team swiftly responded with a cease-and-desist letter accusing Julie of publishing false allegations. The letter demanded a retraction or a correction, threatening legal action if the demands were not met. The controversy continues to unfold, with both sides standing firm in their narratives, leaving the public to navigate the tangled web of family dynamics, faith, and leadership disputes. Susie Lamb Anderson went on to emphasize that the Roy's Report cannot escape liability for the false statements it published and warned of impending legal action should the demands for retraction not be met. The Roy's Report, however, stood firm. In a reply sent the same day, their attorney Christine Jones rejected Anderson's arguments, expressing confidence in the integrity of the publication's reporting. She pointed out that Dayar had been given a chance to comment before publication and that their brief response had been included in the first article. When asked by the Christian Post about Joni Lamb's public response to the allegations, Julie expressed skepticism and highlighted several unanswered questions. Although Joni, the president of Dayar and a prominent figure in Christian broadcasting, had recently addressed the controversy in a video discussion, Julie found her account lacking. In her words, beyond the apparent contrition we reported in our article today, I think the video discussion is most notable for the questions the women don't ask and Joni doesn't answer. For example, no one asks Joni about her alleged one-on-one meeting with Jonathan and Susie's daughter the morning after the girl reportedly told her mother she'd been abused. Why did Joni want to meet with the girl one-on-one, and can Joni explain why the girl reportedly won't talk about the alleged abuse since meeting with Joni? Julie also pressed for clarity on other issues. According to her, Joni claims the incident at the beach house with Pete was resolved soon after it occurred. If that's true, why was there an internal investigation? Also, the forensic counselor who conducted that investigation claims Joni and Marcus shut down the investigation before the counselor was able to conduct a decent interview with Pete. Does Joni deny she did that? If not, why did she and Marcus shut it down? Julie stated her reporting is grounded in extensive interviews and evidence, yet Dayar has chosen to respond selectively. I asked Dayar many specific questions about the allegations, but so far, they've responded only to the questions they wish to discuss. There are many more questions that beg to be answered, she asserted. Joni, for her part, has dismissed the allegations as part of a broader effort to discredit her and the network. She claims her actions have been misrepresented. In the video discussion, she recalled her first awareness of any abuse allegations in 2020 when Susie, her daughter-in-law, contacted her about an incident involving her granddaughter at preschool. My first knowledge of any allegation of abuse was in November 2020 when Susie called me and said there had been an incident at my granddaughter's preschool, Lamb said. She told me that something had happened where a little boy touched her and her friend, and so she called me and asked me if I would go to the school with her. I said absolutely, so I went with her to the school. We reported it to the school, and of course, I was there to encourage and support as I would for any child, but especially my granddaughter. Joni framed this incident as an isolated misunderstanding, suggesting that subsequent claims have been distorted. That was the incident that happened, and yet, what's being written is just taken out of context. I was there, and Susie actually called me to go there. So this word about me covering up, there's no truth to that, she said. However, Jonathan and Susie, now estranged from Dayar, provided a different account of events. They claimed that central to the controversy is an incident Susie reportedly brought to the attention of her late father-in-law, Marcus, before his passing. Susie alleges that her young daughter confided in her about being molested by a family member identified only as Pete. According to Julie's article, the incident occurred when Pete allegedly followed the 5-year-old upstairs as she changed into a swimsuit. Susie described the man's demeanor as eerie, noting, his eyes seemed to go black, like he was in a zombie mode. She immediately alerted Jonathan. Jonathan rushed upstairs to find a relative in the same room as his daughter. He recounted the horrifying moment. To my horror, when I got up there, my daughter was completely naked and he was in the room. I was just immediately like, "What are you doing?" Screaming at the top of my lungs. And he's like, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry." He apologized like 50 times, like I caught somebody red-handed. The Lambs took their concerns to the police, initially keeping the incident under wraps from the rest of the family. However, according to the report, authorities initially closed the case because the child was unable to articulate specific details. The case was reportedly reopened later and is said to be pending with the Sill Police Department in Texas. Meanwhile, Pete's lawyer has denied the allegations, maintaining his client's innocence. As if the allegations weren't distressing enough, the aftermath has been equally chaotic. Following Jonathan's firing from Daya, he and Susie released a video claiming they were being harassed and followed, and have since gone into hiding at an undisclosed location. According to them, the only reason they were going public with the news was to let everyone know they were afraid for their lives for keeping their convictions, which went against Joni. Joni, on the other hand, hasn't relented. She recently fired back against allegations made by Jonathan and Susie, claiming she covered up the sexual abuse of her granddaughter by a family member. According to Joni, the situation has been widely misrepresented, and she emphatically denied any wrongdoing. During a recent episode of Joni Table Talk, addressing the claims, Joni stated, "Absolutely a lie. I never covered up anything. Marcus didn't cover up anything." She argued that the allegations are part of a damaging narrative spread by a blogger with no first-hand knowledge of the situation. According to her, her granddaughter's claims involved an incident at preschool, not a family member, framing this as an attack designed to destroy her family. At the moment, the conflict is no longer just a private matter, it's a public unraveling of a family deeply tied to their faith and ministry. Regardless of what the truth might be, Joni's firm stance has led to a backlash, with some people withdrawing from Daya programming altogether. And yet, she shows no sign of stepping back, even as the situation grows increasingly messy. But let's cut to the heart of the issue. This should be about protecting the child. Here's what everyone, including Joni, Jonathan, and Susie, must remember. Facts state that children rarely lie about molestation, especially intimate ones. These days, it's more about who said what than addressing the main issue, protecting the young girl from further harm and getting her the justice she deserves. But the family feud is hard to look away from, considering how much it has escalated. It's also hard not to wonder about Joni's new husband, who is reportedly a counselor. With all his experience, shouldn't he be stepping in to help mediate this explosive situation? Instead, the family conflict is playing out like a soap opera, and the child's well-being seems to have taken a backseat. At the end of the day, this broken family needs to prioritize healing over hurling accusations. It's time for everyone involved to rally around the child. And put aside personal vendettas. And maybe, just maybe, Grandma Joni should consider acting less like a public defender and more like a grandmother. However, it doesn't look like things will change anytime soon. With Jonathan and Susie calling Joni out on live TV, the situation at Daya appears to have evolved into a deeply contentious legal and public relations battle, with far-reaching implications for the network's reputation and leadership. Known for its global reach, Daya claims to broadcast to 2.3 billion homes and 6.85 billion people worldwide, positioning itself as a significant force in Christian media. However, these allegations, coupled with Julie's unyielding reporting, threaten to disrupt that image. As of now, the dispute shows no signs of resolution. Both sides remain entrenched. The core questions, centering on accountability, transparency, and the treatment of vulnerable individuals, remain unresolved, leaving a cloud of uncertainty over Daya's leadership and future. Subscribe to our channel Beyond the Legacy.